phrase, practice makes perfect. Have you heard that? Practice does not make perfect. The young teenagers, they want to hit hard. What do the teachers say? Don't go for speed. Learn the form right. If your form is incorrect, that will become permanent. Slow. Get your form right. Speed will come later. If your form is incorrect and you have speed, you'll fracture your own hand. Folks, I'm not playing on words. Practice does not make perfect.
What's up, everybody? Kier Gomes here, and welcome back. So if you follow me on Instagram, you know that yesterday or last night we dropped the full back design for the Slowhands playing cards. So today I thought it'd be cool to just do a video kind of letting you know where the design idea came from, kind of so far the thought process that went behind this deck, and maybe even answer some of the questions that you might have. As well, make sure you stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to give you an exclusive first look at the new Oxygen deck by Elemental Playing Cards. Before we get started, please do drop a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's roll that intro and get you guys on your way.
Let's go.
All right, so the first thing that I really want to talk about when it comes to the Slowhands deck is kind of where the idea itself came from, kind of how it happened. So if you didn't know this about me, I was doing magic long before I had a YouTube channel. In fact, I used to walk around my neighborhood with my brother and we used to film our version of street magic when we were like 10 and 12. And those are times that I think it's really important to reflect back on because especially as technology advances and as YouTube becomes more of a platform for things that you enjoy, humble beginning can really get lost on a lot of people. In fact, a lot of people got started in magic off of YouTube. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there was no YouTube when I got started in magic. So I wanted this deck to be kind of a representation of where it began for me, my journey into magic, because I think my story is probably similar to a lot of you guys. Let's break it down. The first thing that I came up with was the title of the deck, which is Slowhands. Now, although I am a big fan of Eric Clapton and his nickname is Slowhands, that is not where the idea for the deck came from. The idea is as simple as when you get started in magic or cardistry or whatever you're doing with cards, a certain level of dexterity has to take place, right? You gotta train your hands, you gotta get that muscle memory in your hands to be able to manipulate things like playing cards. And in the beginning, you just don't have it. So when you start doing magic or you start doing cardistry, your hands, your movements are all gonna be a little bit sketchy, a little bit slow. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. It kind of represents the beginning stages of becoming interested in card magic. Especially for something like cardistry or certain sleights that you do in magic, the best advice that anybody can give you is to get it right, go slow. Start very slow, and then eventually you'll develop that muscle memory until you're able to do it. And I think that that's incredible. I mean, I really think that when I look back on when I was getting into card magic years ago, something that was missing for me was appreciating that I wasn't gonna know how to do a million sleights right away, and reading expert card technique was not gonna make me the best magician in the world. It was gonna take practice and practice and repetition and repetition. So the title came first. I thought of the name Slowhands. I really liked the name of it. It had a good ring to it, but it also represented something that was, you know, indeed very, very close to my journey into card magic, and same for a lot of you. And with the title came the concept. So because I got the title from my journey into getting into card magic, I wanted to develop a theme or kind of a motif around that would eventually inspire the design for the back, the design for the Ace of Spades, the Jokers, kind of everything. So now let's talk about the design. I knew when I started conceptualizing the idea for the deck that I wanted to do something that kind of tipped my hat to, again, where it all started for me. And similar to a lot of you, my first memorable deck of cards was a deck of bicycle rider backs. So for me to get started in card magic, this was what I was used to looking at every single day. Every time I would go to practice, this is what I had. I had a deck of bicycle rider backs, and you know, ask anybody performing now or watch any of David Blaine's beginning specials in the 90s. Everybody was using the classic red rider backs. That was just a staple deck of cards for almost every card magician that you would look up to today. So before you had these fancy, crazy cardistry decks, which I also enjoy, this was kind of the beginning approach to card magic. This is what everybody gets started on, right? And the reason for that is because they feel great, they last a long time, and they're just available. You can go to Walgreens and pick up a deck of bicycles any day of the week, pretty much anywhere you're at. So when it came to the design, I wanted to do something similar to this, right? I wanted to kind of shadow my take on bicycles, but keeping in mind that, there's a theme here of being a beginner. So we drew a lot of inspiration from the classic rider back design, as you can definitely tell. But there were some things that I thought, would go well into this design. For example, I knew that I wanted to have some scroll work around the edges. A lot of my favorite decks of cards have that same kind of thing, like the Black Roses decks, the Keepers. They have those, kind of curvy. They have that scroll work in there that just looks really clean, but also very standard. And that's really, for me, that's what I'm going for, is a deck that represents the standard deck of cards that you would get or that your mom would buy you when you're getting into Magic. So then the stars aligned, because around the time that I was really conceptualizing this deck, I had the idea probably 3 years ago, and I really wanted to bring that to life, but I have no experience designing cards. I'm not very good with Photoshop. I don't know how to use Illustrator. I don't know how to manage a Kickstarter. So around that time, I met Nick from Elemental Playing Cards. At this point, I had been doing YouTube for a while, creating content for social media, and Nick reached out to me with a prototype from the Hydrogen deck that was about to launch on Kickstarter. So he hit me up, he basically asked if he could send me a prototype and maybe I could put something together for him. I was more than happy to do it, because once I saw the design of the deck, I was sold. I really wanted to work with him. I liked the design. He was a really good guy. I got the deck, I did the trailer for the Kickstarter campaign. And just through working together, kind of going back and forth, I mentioned to him that it would be cool for us to work on a deck at some point. He asked what ideas I had. I shared the idea for Slowhands with him, and immediately I think it clicked for both of us that this was a deck we just wanted to do together. So now I had the title, I had a concept in mind, and then I had a very talented designer that was willing to work with me. At that point, I kind of just wanted Nick to bring his ideas to the table, because again, I didn't have a lot of experience with this type of thing, and it seemed like he really was aligned with the idea of the deck, and I just wanted to see what he could come up with. That's when, after a couple iterations and a lot of back and forth, he sent me the original logo for the Slowhands deck, which was the snail with the hands holding up the peace sign. And I fell in love with it. I knew that there was a lot of potential there. And we didn't know yet that we were gonna be doing a bicycle type deck. We just knew that we wanted to do something that represented the concept. So of course, the first idea for the back design was a casino style, like a red back design with a white border, and just having the two snail logos mirroring each other, just like you'd see on the rounders or on like the peelers. And while I still really like that idea, it was so simple, and I don't know if it really got across the concept that I was looking for. I think it would be a cool, maybe like special edition type thing, but it didn't sing to me. So then we started toying around with other ideas, like, we started talking about the tally-ho back designs. We started talking about doing like a B type design, but with a border. And everything that came back from Nick was close to what I wanted. It just didn't grasp me, and it wasn't 100% what I was looking for. So then Nick has the idea that he wants to write Slowhands on the back of the deck, and I thought that was genius. I was super excited. I wanted to see that. So he hand made this calligraphy style Slowhands banner that he put above the snail, and then put it into Photoshop and made kind of a design out of it, and it looked really good. In fact, it looked so good that I was almost just satisfied like that. I almost thought it would look cool to just have Slowhands written on it with the snail logo and have a red back design. I knew I wanted red, by the way. I think blue is an eventual goal, but I knew I wanted red. So then he hits me with the idea of doing some hand-drawn scroll work. So what you see on the design, and you can see it here, that is 100% hand-drawn by Nick. So whereas it might look very similar to the scroll work on the rider backs, he did it by hand, and that allowed us to take our idea even further and kind of put some Easter eggs in the back design. So I'm not gonna talk about those until we get the deck, but there is a lot of hand-drawn things that go into this deck that if you look very closely, you'll be able to see. Now, the next thing is a marking system. So I did not want to do a marked deck. Maybe in the future that would be really cool, but for me, again, when you're first getting into Magic, you don't have access immediately to a marked deck, and you might not even know what it is when you first get started. So I really wanted something that represented the standard approach to playing cards, especially because I think it's best to pick up a deck of cards and learn some sleights before getting into things like gimmicks and getting into things like a marking system, because that can almost become sort of a crutch for a beginner, and then you never really learn anything. So wanted to keep it standard and unmarked. However, we did design a lot of little things into the back design and into the cards that can be used for other effects or just things that are close to me that I wanted to kind of fit into that design. Now, we haven't revealed what the Ace of Spades or the Jokers are gonna look like yet, so I don't wanna get too much into it, but what I will say, I think what we had the most trouble with was actually the Ace of Spades, because conceptually I knew what I wanted the Jokers to look like. I knew what I wanted to see. I didn't know how to design it, and luckily, after some, again, back and forth and multiple iterations, Nick was able to come up with what I think is the perfect and ideal Joker. It's exactly what I was envisioning in my mind. It looks really good, so I can't wait for you guys to see him. But the Ace of Spades was different. The Ace of Spades, neither myself or Nick could really think of what we wanted to do. I didn't want to do a rider back type Ace of Spades because there's really not much you can do to customize it, and anything that we came up with kind of didn't match the theme of the deck. So thinking about a lot of different things, finally we were able to come up with what we think is the best way to represent the brand on the Ace of Spades while still keeping alive the simplicity of standard playing cards. So I am very excited for you guys to see it, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's definitely my favorite Ace of Spades on any deck of cards. I'm not going to talk any more about the faces because those are things that we have not shown yet, and I don't plan on showing you guys right away, so I won't talk much about that, but those are some updates on kind of where the idea came from. So for you beginners out there, I definitely think that this deck has a lot in common with where you might have been at when you were getting into Magic. And even for the experts out there and professional magicians out there, this deck is really meant to represent roots, right? And where you come from, which is where we got the slogan. And that's the last thing we're going to talk about. So the slogan is practice does not make perfect. Now there was a lot of comments that we got as soon as we dropped the first teaser with that saying in there, saying that it was kind of a knockoff from the Verts. I've never actually seen that, and I think the Verts, after I looked into it, they say like perfect practice makes I don't remember what it was, but where we got it was the idea that you're always a student of Magic, and so even when you're first getting started, you can practice, and you're obviously not going to be perfect, but even after you reach that state of being a professional magician or a performing magician at the very least, you're always going to be a student. There's always more that you can learn. Nobody can ever master Magic. You can be as good as any other magician out there, but everybody is a student to the craft. So practice genuinely will never make you a perfect magician. So it kind of represents the ongoing journey from when you first get started and kind of just this forever chasing perfection idea. And that means a lot to me because something that I always strive for in my content, in my videos or whatever, is perfection. And that's something that I never reached. It's something that I never have got to. So I'm perfectly content with always trying because it means that I'm always going to put my best foot forward. And that's what Slowhands is all about. So hope you guys are ready. Slowhands is coming to Kickstarter very soon. And when it does, I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. So Last thing I'm gonna say, it is gonna be on crushed premium stock, so it's gonna feel really good. We're printing with the USPCC for this one. We don't have a design for the tuck case yet, so any ideas that you have, please leave them down below. I would be more than happy to read them, respond to them, and who knows, we might even need to borrow some of your ideas. If you guys are interested in knowing more about the deck and kind of following our journey all the way up until the launch, then you can follow us on Instagram. The Slowhands Instagram will be in the link down below, as well as the Elemental Playing Cards, which were Nick Nisco's first design that was successfully funded on Kickstarter. And that brings me to my next point. Before we go, here is your very first exclusive look at the Oxygen deck by Elemental Playing Cards. Alright guys, really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you to Nick for letting me be the first one to reveal the back design. Super excited to see how the final drafts of this deck come out. Can't wait for it to go to Kickstarter. I personally will be backing it, of course. Please drop a like on this video if you liked it, guys, and make sure you're subscribed for more awesome content just like this. All that being said, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. I know I will. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.